Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 117, and I'm going to be featuring in today's episode a label that I've regarded very highly ever since I first stumbled onto it back in 2009. Today's feature is going to be the label Just Another Beat. Just Another Beat is a house, tech house, maybe deep house, slash maybe in some cases bordering on dub techno label that originated out of Germany in 2009, like I said, and it was started by a gentleman named Thaddeus Herman. And the label caught my attention, I think, because for some reason I like the simplicity of the artwork. A lot of times when I'm sifting through Juno picks, I click on records that have interesting or like clean looking labels that are aesthetically appealing to me. I guess I figure if I'm going to take a chance on listening to a record and there's 100 of them to listen to, I'm going to start with the ones that at least look nice, because then if I end up buying them, I'll have something that looks nice and sounds nice too. I guess that's kind of a weird thing to say, but there are a lot of people, like my friend Ryan Bauer, he doesn't care at all what the records look like. They could be all plain white labels to him, whereas to me, I would regard that probably a little bit lower than something that had really nice artwork. But like I said, Just Another Beat had really clean, smooth artwork, and I can show it to you here. Here's an example of it. This is the first record on the label. It's an intriguing name, right? Just Another Beat. It's like, well, it's humble, right? It's not making any assumptions with that. And in speaking of the aesthetics of the vinyl, this is the first one on the label by an artist, Prostitune. You can see here, as I clean off the 12 years worth of dust bunnies, that there's actually some etchings in the run out. If you look down at my bottom finger here, you can see Just Another Beat, and it gives you the release number, and if I pivot this, you can see some of the track names. So I thought it was interesting to have what would normally be in the run out groove in the run in groove. Now, I never mistakenly dropped the needle on on this inside edge. I don't know what the hell would happen. It probably would not sound good. So if you are going to buy these, I'm pretty sure all of the singles have the run in information here. So just be careful. I don't know that your needle would like going over some letters. And these etchings here are kind of raised, so there's a little bit of I would think that would be a needle risk. That being said, very cool aesthetic. Oh, and that reminds me of another thing. I love these singles because there's only ever 2 tracks, at least in the initial first probably 8 records. They might have got away from this, but in the first 8, I'm like 99% sure that there's only ever 2 tracks on the releases, which makes it ideal for DJing, right? Because then you don't have that pitfall of the track ending and you're kind of lost in the headphones, and you get this 1.5 second gap, and then the next track starts, and maybe you hadn't faded all the way out, so you get that like little trickle bleed in thing that happens sometimes. Not the end of the world, but in the world of vinyl DJing, there's tons of pitfalls. I could probably do an episode about all the things that can go wrong when you're trying to DJ vinyl and make a clean set. That's one less thing to worry about. And the fact that they're all 45 RPM, which means that also from a purist sonic perspective, you're using more wax to represent one piece of music. So it's like going from a 128 kbps MP3 to a 320, right? This is the 320 because there's so much wax being used to represent one song. And when you listen to anything on Just Another Beat, you're not going to have anybody complaining about background noise or like oh my gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought there. Yeah, you're not going to have anybody complaining about background noise on the tracks or the volume levels or the mastering. Everything there is pretty well refined. So it's almost like right out of the gate on this label, they had it done well, right? It wasn't like the first release was a misstep and then they used releases 2 and 3 to sort of reel it in and get it dialed in. They launched right out of the gate correctly and really never looked back. So today I have 6 singles for you that I want to review. They are now over my shoulder. Before I get into that, there are 2 albums that are on the Just Another Beat label. They're both by Kim Brown and they're both very highly regarded. I wanted to focus on the singles, even though I also have high respect for the albums. I thought maybe just go through the singles and keep it simple. Otherwise this episode is going to be like 38 minutes long. So the first release was by an artist, Prostitune, and it was the Money Nugget EP. I can't remember the track name. It might actually be called Money Nugget on the A1. That's the one that I like the most. And I remember I wrote a review for this on Discogs, and I was sort of speculating as to who the artist could be. And I was saying, well, it kind of reminds me of this record, and it kind of reminds me of that record. Somebody was like trying to clown me on Discogs for that, and it's just like, yeah, whatever, dude, screw you. But when I went back and listened to it just yesterday, I listened to it, and I still actually agree with myself with what I said there. So I do think it sounds like a Theo Parrish record, and the reason I said that or at least that it has strong Theo Parrish influence, is because if you listen to the kick drum, there's no high end on the kick. It's just like all low end thump. And it was like the producer, whoever Prostitune is. So actually, I don't know that Prostitune is actually known. There was somebody that said it was, I can't remember the guy's name. Somebody actually made a declaration on the Discogs page saying that he knew who it was, but nobody else clicked the helpful button. But maybe that guy's right. Somebody else said it was Sven Weisemann. It could be. And obviously I know that it's not Theo Parrish or Francois K at this point. But I did say that the record drew influence from both Francois K and Theo Parrish. Theo likes to put low-end thump into his tracks, and if you listen to the drum patterns in Money Nugget, it's also it's like a lo-fi Theo sounding drum. So I don't think I was totally off base by saying that. And also, I think the melodic component of Money Nugget, which is a very soft and gentle, breezy Sunday afternoon type of affair, very strongly reminds me of the Francois K remix of Dido's Hunter, which is a stone cold kind of understated classic in my opinion. Now moving on to the second release of the label, this is where the alias Jouem, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I mean, who the hell knows. Jouem, I'll pronounce it as Jouem, came out with the Levitation EP. And on the A side, which is the one I'm going to feature here, it's a deep, slow techno vibe that it really, I think it caught people off guard. I think when this record released, even though you can get this for $9 or $10 now, there wasn't really anything else that sounded like Jouem at the time. And also, people didn't know that it was Sven Weisemann back then. It's now known that it's Sven. But it was almost like, because Jouem ended up releasing other records, I'll give you a picture. There's 6 or 7 other records that fit this style. It was almost like the brand of Jouem got a little bit diluted. Not to say that there's anything wrong with this. This was always a strong record, but it used to sell for $40 or $50 when it first released, and it was because it was novel and people. It was like it was special, right? It was a very obvious standout in your collection, and it just got to the point where with the other Jouem releases, I think people found similarity in some of the other records, and I think that's what caused the price of this to drop. It's not that the quality dropped, it's just that if you like this sound, you don't necessarily need to get it at this record. The B-side is the one that touches more on dub techno and is probably one of the most dub techno related tracks on the label. It's almost a remix of the A-side, which is called Levitation. It's like the A-side plus some more traditional dub techno sounds. Now moving on to the third single on the label, this one's also by Jouem. This one's called Drifting, and I would say that this was a very worthy sequel to the Levitation EP. I really like the A-side on this. It feels kind of slow. I didn't clock it in, but I think it might be around 115, 116, 117 beats per minute, where it's a little bit slow for your average techno set, but it would work in a deep house or something like really deep. The track itself is very cavernous and dark, and when I was listening to it this week, I couldn't help but be captivated by there's two drum loops that sort of hit almost simultaneously, and that drum loop works for the entire duration of the track, which I think is about 8 or 9 minutes. So it has that same sort of hypnotic effect that a lot of maybe something like a Baby Ford record would, where I would say it's almost like minimal. It's almost like deep house minimal darkness, and I think the darkness is accented by one of the sounds that really also stands out besides the drum loop is the metallic chains. It sounds like you have big metallic chain link chains that are being clinked and clanged, and that all sort of comes together in really, like I said, a minimal tech house, deep house fusion that is a total stormer. So I just cheated and I went back and looked, and it looks like Prostitune actually is known as a producer named David Jansen. So Prostitune reappeared on the label as the fourth release here, and this is the Just Fix It EP. And I wanted to feature this because if you like tracks by Mr. G, if you listen through Mr. G's catalog, what I think he's known for is something that I call dark house, where it's very obvious housey elements, but there's just really something sinister that lurks and underlies the foundation of Mr. G's records. I mean, it's not that he doesn't ever go bright and cheery, but it's pretty rare. You know, what Mr. G's known for are like 126 house thumpers that you would play as peak hour house tracks. Now, the track that I like on here is called Just Fix It. It's the A1. And if you told me that this was made by Mr. G, I would believe you. Another track or another artist that I think is reflective of this dark house sound is somebody named Cleveland. I'll give you a couple pictures of Cleveland records that you might like. But I really thought that this sound here was a great way to round out the Just Another Beat label and show yet another side or another flavor of the house that they wanted to represent. Now, skipping ahead to volume 7 in the series, this one is by Kim Brown, who's the same artist or pair of artists that made those albums behind me. This is the Evermind EP, and I couldn't help when I was listening to the A1 on this, thinking about the Guy Barato, Beautiful Life. I featured this in my original Fluff Prog episode that I made probably 10 or 20 episodes back. I featured Guy Barato's track in there, and there are very obvious similarities in the synth plugin that was used, and I think it's even written in the same key in the Guy Barato track as it is here. So if you like Guy Barato's track Beautiful Life, which I would think is the possible crowning achievement of his production career here, you're really going to like the Kim Brown on here. It's the same hopeful optimism that you just can't ignore. And my last pick for the episode, this is probably in the top 3 strongest tracks of the episode. This is Sven Weisemann finally revealing himself on the label. And he did the Whatever It Is EP here. And the A1 track here is really, really strong. I feel that there's a similarity between this and Tromprin's alias Metatron. If you listen to some of the Metatron records, and you listen to the really nice vocal sample in here, you get that same childlike emotional state that Tron Prince is like very proficient at creating here. In fact, if somebody can comment down below, if you listen to the vocal sample in here, the female vocal, there's a Tron Prince record that I can't find, or I can't remember the name of, where the girl says, "Let it go." I know that it's a Tron Prince record. I don't know which alias of his it's under. I don't know if it's under the Metatron, Prince of Denmark, Tron Prince, or some remix that he did, but I think very obvious similarities here, and you can just see Sven Weisemann's ability to compose ambient and create this very emotional aesthetic, and this is definitely one of the most emotional records on the entire label. All right, that's all for today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed some of these Just Another Beat picks. Spend some time looking through the catalog. This is a label where, for whatever reason, the quality's high, but the prices never really inflated, and I'm thankful for that. It's nice to be able to talk about some records that aren't, overpriced and expensive, so that if you find something you like, you can just go and snatch it up in the marketplace. So that's all for today, guys. Take care.